Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we are continuing the trend of trying beers from brewers that are new to me. So for today's first beer from a new brewer, I have got Weathered Souls Brewing Company out of San Antonio, Texas. This is called Costa Rican French Press. It's an imperial stout that clocks in at 11.8% ABV. Was brewed with toasted coconut, cacao nibs, and coffee. Specifically, oddly enough, Ethiopian coffee. So I'm not sure, other than just maybe they like the name Costa Rican French Press, but nonetheless, it's essentially a coffee imperial stout. And they did further go on to say on this can that it clocks in at 50 IBUs. You don't often see that on stouts, but I like that. That's cool that they gave us the information. So, first beer from a new to me brewer, Costa Rican French Press. It's got a map of, obviously, Costa Rica. Very colorful. Looks nice. So we're going to get this cracked gently. Okay. And pour it right in the old stout glass. Yep. Very thick, very dark. Let's give some agitation. Give it a chance to form a head here. Not sure if I got enough agitation. Didn't quite get the whole can in there. Made a mess on my hand. That's okay. We can wash up later. Let's just hold this up. Visually, absolutely pitch black. I mean, this was thick. It looked black pouring out. Almost like really old used motor oil. Very, very thick, very dark, very viscous. So I probably could have been a bit more aggressive straight down in the middle of the glass, but there seems to be a decent bit of activity here. So I'm not sure how well the head would have formed and stuck around at any rate. But we do have a nice little bit of cling on the sides and a tiny little floating fine pad on top. Let's get right up over it for a sniff. Oh, wow, yeah. That smells like a very big beer. Very deeply roasted malts, coffee, coconut, it all jumps out at you. The one thing that I can't really pick up any detection of aroma on is the cacao nibs. I'm sure that they play their part, but I'm not really getting anything out of the aroma that's coming through to me that says, yep, that's cacao nibs. Very strongly, deeply roasted malt, coffee, and coconut. The toasted coconut is really coming through. That sometimes isn't the case in a big coffee imperial stout, but the toasting in general does help accentuate the aromatics as well as the flavor compounds. So let's just jump right in and see what this one's about. Oh, man. Oh, boy. That's a big, bold, in-your-face beer. 11.8% ABV. I shouldn't be surprised, but this is another big one. So I've got a ton of really big stouts I've been saving. That's why I got so many stouts that have been coming out as of late. But I love them. There's a ton of them. They're very popular. So I'm trying to get my hands on as many as I can that seem promising to check out and see what they're about. And talk about just another great first experience with a brewer from whom I have never had a beer prior. Absolutely incredible, this beer. So we will talk about the flavor. Let's talk about the body and the mouthfeel. 11.8, that's a high ABV on a big beer style. This body is very heavy. It has an absolute ton of weight behind it. It feels like a thick, dense, heavy beer. Mouthfeel, a ridiculous amount of resistance to it. It is super, super viscous. When you agitate around the palate, it does get quite creamy, which further accentuates that sense of thickness. Big body, big, thick, viscous, resistant mouthfeel that gets very creamy. Absolutely fantastic on the texture side of things. So, the flavor profile. When you swallow, you are immediately hit with a big punch of roast malt in tandem with coffee. That's what hits first. The malt and the coffee together. Big, deeply, deeply roasted on both sides of the equation. The malts and the coffee, they taste distinctly different. The coffee tastes exactly like coffee. Nice, deep, dark roast. They weren't shy with their volume of beans. And the malts, very deep, dark roast, but a completely separate kind of character. It's got more of that grainy, cereal-like quality to it, and a little bit of a suggestion of getting into char-like territory. but absolutely huge. Big, big punch of flavor. Took about 3, 4, 5 seconds, and then the coconut really started to open up. And it's very, very well done. Coconut can be a tricky ingredient with which to brew. If you don't get the right coconut and put it in the right stage of the process in the right amount, it can sometimes produce these kind of off, funky flavors. That's not happening here. This tastes extremely well crafted, extremely well put together. Just as with the aroma, there's nothing in here that I'm picking up that I'm saying, oh, that really tastes like cacao nibs. But again, I'm sure it has a part to play. Whether or not it's binding with and enriching the coffee or the malt side, very, very deep, dark, rich beer. Now to the point that they said 50 IBUs. I believe it. This, for an Imperial Stout, definitely has a good punch of bittering. I don't want to say it's on IPA level kind of territory, but 50 IBUs is not a low number. How I'm perceiving it in the glass is maybe not quite 50, but it's definitely more pronounced than your average stout. This is a big roasty stout, and it's got some of those classic roasty, earthy bitters that are coming through. It's absolutely fantastic. So far, I am extremely impressed with this beer. Exquisitely balanced, huge and punchy in your face, and absolutely phenomenal flavors blending together, all with their own voice, all working in concert. So we're going to jump back in for a second sip, make sure we didn't miss anything. I'll really be paying a keen attention to whether or not I'm detecting any of the cacao. Then we'll talk about the finish. Fantastic stout. Take two. It's just roast malt, coffee, big kick of bitters right up front. Big, bold in your face. Roasty, roasty malt, coffee, coffee, coffee. I think maybe the balance of malt to coffee is about 40% malt, 60% coffee, maybe even 35% malt, 65% coffee. It's coffee dominant, which is nice if you're really into coffee stouts, and I absolutely love them. Those two flavors just pair beautifully together. Yeah, there's that coconut again. Yeah, even on second sip, there's really not any residual anything that I'm tasting in here that I pick up and say, oh, that really tastes like cacao nibs. But again, it's got its part to play. Whether it's binding with that malt bill or that roasty underpinning of the coffee, it's definitely in here for a reason. But at day's end, whether or not my taste buds can sense it, I can tell you what I am getting is absolutely delicious. This is a phenomenally well put together beer. A wonderful first example from a new to me brewer. I absolutely love this one. This is a very, very, very well done, very big coffee imperial stout, and I am a big fan. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, call it my scores. When we come back, we'll get this one ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. So this was Weathered Souls Brewing Company, Costa Rican French press, an Imperial Stout clocking in at 11.8% ABV. It was brewed with coffee, toasted coconut, and cacao. Weathered Souls is based in San Antonio, Texas. So starting with the aroma. The aroma on this beer was nice. It smelled good. You could smell the roasty undercurrent to the malt bill as well as the coffee, and the coconut also came through clearly. I just expected a lot bigger presence from the aroma profile on the nose here. It was really just high end of average in terms of pungency, and you really had to get right up over it to really get it out of the glass and get a sense of it. But when you did, it smelled absolutely fantastic. Really only couldn't detect the cacao, but that often gets lost in big imperial stouts like this. Overall, the aroma gets a 6 out of 10. For the taste on this beer was fantastic. This at its core is really an imperial coffee stout. That's at its core. The cacao is a nice added ingredient that really helps bring out some underlying earthiness and pairs well and bridges the gap between the coffee and the malt bill. And the coconut in this was top tier. This was one of those that pulled off the coconut ingredient additive very, very well. No funky off flavors, but it was very intense. Roast from the malt bill and from the coffee. I absolutely loved it. Taste gets a 10 out of 10. For the body, this beer had a massive body. Way, way weightier and heavier than really an 11.8 would let you on to even suspect. Very big presence. Body gets a 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel, same story with the mouthfeel. Massively viscous, massively resistant. I didn't expect it to be this weighty and this thick, but it really was. Felt absolutely right on the palate. A big, substantial beer. Mouthfeel gets a 10 out of 10. For the finish is one of the categories that surprised me. It was above average, to be sure, but given the flavor intensity and pungency and just forward presence that the flavors had, I kind of expected the length of the finish to drag out, especially since it did have a decent bit of underlying bitters. They went to the point to tell us 50 IBUs, and I believe it. There was a nice kick of bitters and this big, intense underpinning of char and roastiness from the malt bill and intensity of coffee. It just didn't last quite as long on the back of the palate as I expected. But it was above average. Finish gets a 7 out of 10. For the head and retention, this is another stout I've had as of late that really did not do that great of a job. It was really low end of average. It tried. It just really didn't form one. It really didn't stick around at all. Head and retention gets a 3 out of 10. For the appearance, this was textbook Imperial Stout. Pitch black gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance on this beer I really enjoyed, especially the interplay between the coffee and the malt bill. Coconut also came through very clearly. The only thing I would have liked was just maybe a little more cacao in there to bring out some additional bittering and to let the actual cacao flavor come through a little more clearly. As it were, it got a little muddled with that intensity of the roast and the coffee, but that's a minor nitpick. Overall, I thought the balance was phenomenal. Balance gets a 9 out of 10. Feeling in the tangible, subjectively, I loved it. I love a great coffee stout, Imperial or otherwise, and that coconut that was done exactly right was just an added bonus for me. Subjectively, 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, here we go, another stout that, it lost some pretty big points in a couple categories. Yet again, we're talking head and retention. It also lost some reasonably significant in aroma, but be that as it may, in the grand scheme of things, it's poured at home. It is what it is. It's not off of a tap. I just have to tell you what I experienced. But I don't think that the beer should be bashed as an example, because I think this is a very fine example of what an Imperial Coffee Stout and some additional additives for added treat is about. They brewed a fantastic beer here. This was a wonderful first beer from a brewer I've never tried anything from prior, and I think they did a great job on this one. Example of the style gets a 9 out of 10, which brings the total score on Weathered Souls Brewing Company's Costa Rican French Press to an 84 out of 100. So this is a similar story to the gigantic, most premium Scotch barrel-aged Russian Imperial Stout we just reviewed, where you look at the score, okay, it's still well above average. Yes, it is. But you review a lot of beers in the mid and upper and lower 90s, why would I consider this one? Well, take the head retention out of the equation. It only got a 3. Let's propose for a minute that it got a perfect 10 out of 10. That's 7 additional points. It's already into the 90s there. So look, and the few other minor points, it all adds up. I have to tell you what I experienced, but make no mistake, this is an absolutely top tier, extremely well done Imperial Coffee Stout. If you're a fan of this style, this is one I do highly recommend. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.